1 minute, Josh had been fast asleep. The next, he was wide awake. He didn't know what had woken him. By the faint light of his bedside lamp, his eyes struggled to focus on his alarm clock. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Out of the corner of his eye, Josh saw a movement. His football was rolling slowly but deliberately across the carpet towards him. The ball felt warm. Of course, he'd left it in the corner by the radiator, as he did every night. But what had made the ball roll by itself like that? Josh shivered and snuggled down under his quilt. "Morning, Joshua," said his mother as she opened his curtains. Sunshine flooded into the bedroom. Good, it was going to be fine for the match. It was the first time Josh had been chosen for the school team, and he wanted the day to be perfect. Now all he had to do was get through the grind of a morning's schoolwork and keep his excitement under control. Josh rubbed his eyes and jumped out of bed, automatically picking up his football. It was not until he put the ball on his unmade bed that he remembered waking in the night. But surely he'd just picked up the ball from beside the radiator, not from the bed where it had rolled in the night. How odd! Mum must have put it back. Later, Josh's mother drove him and his sister, Alice, to school. As Josh's mother dropped him off at the school gates, she wished him luck for the match. Josh dodged out of the car before she could kiss him. "We're going to win tonight," said Josh to Alice as they walked into the playground. "I'm sure you will," said Alice. "I wish I could watch, but if I miss the auditions this afternoon, I won't get a part in the panto." Alice, like their mother, was keen on drama. Somehow, Mum always managed to come and see Alice when she was acting. Josh wished he had a dad to come and cheer him on, but it was no good wishing. Josh's father wasn't interested in football either. He had taken himself off to live and work in America when Josh was only a baby. But Josh's grandfather, Jim, he'd been interested in football. Josh had never known his grandfather. Grandad Jim had died before Josh was born. The head, Mr. Henry, asked the team to stay behind after assembly. He reminded them of their responsibilities as hosts at that afternoon's home match. They must make the St. Luke's team welcome. They must show good sportsmanship. It was the playing, not the winning, that counted. "Now for some exciting news," said Mr. Henry. "There is to be a special feature about the school in the Echo this week. A photographer will be taking pictures of the match this afternoon. Now off you go to your classes." Eventually, lunchtime came. Josh was first to get changed. Proudly, he ran with his friends onto the field to meet the St. Luke's team. But even as they set up for a warm-up and a run around the field, the air was changing. It took on a sudden chill. Mist was beginning to rise from the nearby canal and drift across the playing field. The games teacher from St. Luke's and their own Mr. Briggs had their heads together. Soon they blew the whistle and beckoned everyone over. Mr. Briggs said, "This mist is already beginning to thicken. It's going to be difficult to see each other soon, never mind the goalposts. We've agreed to shorten the game to 30 minutes each end, and we're starting now." Voices cut through the fog, distorted in the damp air. Figures were growing harder to see as the mist spread patchily across the pitch. Josh could just make out that it was Kev who'd succeeded in grabbing the ball back from St. Luke's. As Josh shouted to Kev, his voice sounded strange, but Kev responded, and the ball was Josh's. Lucky, he plunged through the mist, weaving his way up the right wing, until he knew he had to pass the ball. Only one player was visible. Josh struck out and landed the ball in front of his teammate's boot. A superb strike saw the ball fly home, past the goalkeeper's head and into the roof of the net. "That was a good goal," said Rob. "It wasn't mine," said Josh. "I passed it to—" Yeah, come on, let's play," said Rob. Josh gasped in the cold air and felt it as hard as glass in his lungs. He couldn't finish his sentence before everyone was in position and the ball was back in play. St. Luke's rallied. Having created an opening, they kept hold of the ball in a relentless attack. Twice, Rob broke through their ranks, only to have the ball taken back by a strong advance from St. Luke's. Now it was Josh's chance to tackle. He hurled himself forward. His boot connected with the ball, but only briefly, and again the ball was disappearing towards its target. Now Andy tried to intervene, but the ball shot in the air off the end of a big St. Luke's boot and slotted into their goal, scoring an equaliser. 1-1, and he hated a draw. "We're going to change ends now," said Mr. Briggs. Andy headed the ball to Josh. Josh kept moving, dragging the defence all over the place. He ran forward and skidded on the wet grass and recovered. His marker's boot shot towards the ball, but even as Josh swerved out of the tackle, the other boy lost his balance and landed with a squelch on the churned-up sludge. A shout went out from the sidelines. "Yes, yes, yes!" Josh felt the beads of sweat on his forehead. He could barely see the goal, but he fired. The goalkeeper was on it in an instant, palming it out of the goal mouth, but before he could follow it up, Josh saw a boot, its laces flapping like his own, strike from a narrow angle. The ball flicked easily into the back of the St. Luke's net. Goal! 2-1. Josh wondered who'd scored that goal when Rob was congratulating him. "2 scores, Josh. Go for your hat-trick," said Rob. "Well played, Josh." Even Mr. Briggs was congratulating him now as they ran back down the field. "It wasn't me," said Josh. But his voice was muffled in the mist. And now the ball was back in play. He hadn't time to talk. The second goal was a blow to St. Luke's, but they were not dispirited for long. They quickly took the ball and kept hold of it. Their tallest, fastest striker pushed the ball towards the nearly invisible net. Suddenly, through the mist, the shot took the lurking goalkeeper by surprise, but his quick reaction and a full-length dive saved it. Brushing the hair from his eyes with the back of a muddy hand, he threw the ball to Andy, who passed it to Kev. Kev, screaming like a banshee, headed the ball to Josh. "Josh! This one's mine!" yelled Josh, lashing out. The ball spun through the air and bounced off the goalpost, momentarily disappearing into the mist, before it reappeared. Josh watched as again it was booted through the air and into the St. Luke's goal. Who had booted it? There was a flash from the sidelines, where the photographer from the Echo was trying to catch the scene despite the fog. Next day was Saturday. Josh did not have to go to school and face his friends' misplaced praise. When the paper came, he turned straight to the sports page. There was the photograph. Under the caption, "Hat Trick Hero." Josh stared. There was a picture of him kicking the ball. Hazy in the background, the goalposts were just visible. Josh looked hard at the action photograph. Was it him? There was the boot in the air, with its dangling lace. And there was the ball curving away to land smack between the goalposts. I thought it was a football match, not a war, said Josh's mother, looking over his shoulder. He was still staring at the page when the doorbell rang. It was Mr. Williamson, an elderly man who lived a few doors away. He'd lived here for years and was a good friend of Josh's family. He was waving a copy of the Echo. Your son's a chip off the old block, isn't he? Chuckled Mr. Williamson. Come in, said Josh's mother. I'm glad someone else is as excited as I am. Josh seems to be taking it all in his stride. What's chip off the old block? Asked Josh. You're like your granddad Jim, said Mr. Williamson. I was at school with him, you know. We were best mates and forever kicking a ball around. We played in the streets then, when there weren't so many cars about. I reckon you take after him, lad. I never knew him, said Josh. You look just like him when he was your age, said Mr. Williamson. Funny thing is, I remember playing a game just like this one. It's almost history repeating itself. It was Jim's first inter-school match, and down came the fog. November it was too. We won the game 2-0, and your granddad scored both goals. But old Jim, he never forgot that match. You want to know why? Josh nodded. His eyes were fixed on his neighbour's face. Well, said Mr. Williamson, when Jim's second goal put us in the lead, the ref blew his whistle on us, stopped the match there and then. We'd won, but Jim never felt satisfied. He always said the blooming fog stopped him getting his hat-trick. Seems you've done it for him. For a minute, Josh didn't speak. He had forgotten that his granddad's name was Jim. That was what Mr. Henry, the head teacher, had called him by mistake yesterday. Then he remembered the football rolling across the carpet to his side in the night. Josh's mum was looking at him. You're right, said his mother. He does look a lot like his granddad at that age. Hang on, I've got a photo somewhere. She pulled out an old shoebox from the cupboard and began to rummage through its contents. It was full of old envelopes and postcards with old-fashioned postage stamps. Black and white photos were scattered amongst them. At last she pulled out a rather dog-eared print. Here you are, said his mother. He's even in his school football strip. Hey up, said Mr. Williamson, that makes me feel old. There's Jim. How old? 11 maybe? And look, his bootlace is undone as usual. Just like yours, Josh. He handed Josh the photo. Josh had only seen photos of his granddad as an adult. In the picture, there was a boy looking up at him. The photo was black and white, just like his own picture in today's paper. And for a second, Josh felt as if he was looking at a photo of himself. Jim had the same build as Josh, the same straight blonde hair, and the same eyes that smiled up at him. Josh smiled back. Hat-trick hero, said Josh.